Welcome to the Bella Vista Garden program. I'm Char Brunje, and joining me today is Barb Templin, a fellow member of the Bella Vista Garden Club. Welcome, Barb.
Thanks for having me. This is my second time that I've been a guest at the garden show here, and I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Today, Barb is going to be talking about the scoop on mulch. And we will also be talking about upcoming events and telling you what you need to do in your garden during the month of October. Okay, Barb.
Well, the other thing that I wanted to remind you is upcoming events. And this Saturday, October 1st, will be the Garden Club's fall plant sale. And it's going to be held this year at Allen's parking lot. And it features irises and perennials, bulbs that you can plant in the spring, and the famous Bella Vista daffodil that we spent a lot of time and money with last fall in trying to put the beauty back in Bella Vista. The sale is from 8 to 1, and if you happen to miss it, you can go to the wastewater treatment plant and pick up plants from 9 to 1 Monday through Thursday, or Monday through Friday, I guess.
This is also the time of the year for the Master Gardener training. And if you're interested in taking some of these classes and becoming a Master Gardener, you can call the Extension office, and the number will be on the bottom of the screen, and put your name on a list. They will send an application to be returned, and if you're accepted into this program, they will send you information on the classes and also other pamphlets. There is a fee, though, for the classes, basically to cover the handbook and the class expenses. These classes will start in January, and it will be for a total of 40 hours, and this will be your in-classroom training. Now, Barb, we brought in some floral designs today. Let's share these with our audience.
Today, I have, on my right, I have a pumpkin that you carve out, scoop out all the insides as smoothly as you can, and then if you are lucky enough to have some fresh flowers in your garden, these are from my garden, and I was lucky enough to get some mums. They're just coming out to bud now. Marigolds. There's a few sad-looking brown-eyed Susans there, and some of the grasses. These are immature grasses. They have not bloomed out yet, but it makes a really nice, festive arrangement for Thanksgiving or for a fall get-together that you're having, and use it wherever you want to use it, as far as your coffee table or your dining room table as a centerpiece.
And now I have this pumpkin that I saw in a magazine. I've got some illustrations a little bit later to show you. And I thought I would glitz it up a little with some thumbtacks. And for the sake of the program, I did not use real succulents. But we have an arrangement of succulents here, as well as berries, and then some added little curlicues with some willow sticks from the garden. And then I just use the spray adhesive. Let's go to the illustrations and show them just where I got my idea and inspiration. At the top, we're going to be looking at planting pumpkins, and it's always a nice thing to do is make sure you have a garden full of pumpkins so you can use them for floral designs. And in the top right-hand corner, you will see the inspiration for the pumpkin I designed, and I used the spray adhesive, glue, just sprayed the top, and then I added the moss. And if you want, you can put pine cones or nuts for added attraction. The curly willow up at the top. And then use a little thumbtacks or other designs on your pumpkin if you wish to make it a little bit more decorative. Place it on a cake stand and you can put it in the middle of your table or on a side table. The lower left-hand corner will tell you about a squash that was used that would look very nice on a dining room table, and you're going to be carving it rectangularly, and you're going to use the succulents in that as well. And then over on the right of that will be another pumpkin that looks similar to what was the inspiration for what I did. So now that we've talked about these designs, let's talk about our program today, Barb, and that's called Mulch.
Today, you are going to learn all there is about the lovely topic of mulch. You wouldn't think that there would be that much to mulch because it's kind of a natural thing that we do as far as gardening is concerned, at least those of us that have gardened for a long time. But remember, mulch was Mother Nature's idea long before it was man's idea. And that's fallen leaves and twigs and moss and that sort of thing, and it makes the ground a lot more fertile. The thing about mulch, and we'll get to the two different types that there are, but the main reasons that you want to use mulch is it keeps moisture in, at least twice as much moisture as unmulched areas. And that's important, especially, the hot summer that we've had this year. It also regulates the soil temperature. In the summer, it keeps the ground cool, and in the winter, it keeps it warm. And you don't want vast variations of soil temperature, especially if you have flowers that you want to have come back in the spring. It also, and this is the big one, it also prevents weeds. Because on a hot day like it was this summer, you don't want to be outside weeding and going through your garden. But if you use the proper amount of mulch, you'll prevent weeds. The other thing is that if you use an organic mulch, it will break down and provide nutrients for your garden. And that way, everything is natural then. You don't have to worry about adding anything to your garden soil, but it also prevents soil-borne diseases. And sometimes that's very important because besides adding the proper nutrients to your soil, it also prevents soil from compacting down so much that it becomes crusted. And we've all had that. We may not know what it was called, but when you water it and the water just beads on the top of it, that means your soil is crusted and you're not going to be able to, water has a very difficult time in seeping down where it needs to be. The other thing is that it fights topsoil degradation, which means that it won't erode away. We've had some wonderful heavy rains this summer, and if we didn't all have mulch, we would probably have lost not only our soil, but a lot of us our plants. Now, the two types of mulch that there are is there's organic and there's inorganic. The first thing we're going to talk about is the organic kind, and that's the kind that we all probably use in our gardens most anyway. And that is the biggest one, I think, is the shredded hardwoods that we use. But when you're looking at, if you're buying mulch by the bag, and it doesn't matter about the color, I'll get into that in just a minute. But if you're looking for the proper mulch, on your bag of mulch, look for mulch certified by the Mulch and Soil Council. I bet you didn't know that, did you? Now, there are beautiful colors of mulch. There's the black mulch and the red mulch and that sort of thing. There's also natural colored. And we always are wondering, what did they color that with? However, don't worry about it. The red mulch contains iron oxide, plain old rust, iron. So your soil needs that anyway. So the black mulch, it also provides carbon. And there again, that's a really nice thing for your garden to have. Another organic one is grass clippings, but there again, you want to be careful because a lot of us take our grass clippings and pile it up, and then it doesn't break down and it starts to mold. You don't want that. The other thing is that if used properly, say in a vegetable garden where you're wanting a lane or a path to your different vegetables, your different plants, it makes a wonderful path for that kind of thing. Now, the most popular kind of mulch that in years past we've been able to buy is cypress mulch. Cypress, because of the properties of cypress, it adds so much to our soil, but only if it's a mature cypress tree. And what's occurred is that the cypress groves have been so over-harvested, and once you harvest cypress, it doesn't grow back. So they are now harvesting immature cypress trees, and that does not have the same properties as the mature trees as far as insect and weed control. So keep that in mind. Last year's leaves, and we live in Bella Vista, so we have lots of leaves, and most of us rake them off or blow them off your grass. But if you leave them shredded, not the whole leaf, if you leave them on your grass, it really adds a lot of nice nutrients to your grass. It also, as far as mulch in your garden, vegetable or flower garden, it adds a lot of nice nutrients. But you cannot leave the leaf whole. What happens is that the leaves, especially if they're wet, they compact and then they get moldy. You don't want that. Another one is sawdust or wood shavings, that sort of thing. Know where they come from. If it's clean, not untreated wood, you can't use untreated wood, use it. Now, here again in Bella Vista, we have a lot of pine trees, so we get pine needles. Pine needles is good. We can use that in a variety of ways for our flower gardens. And the thing about pine needles is that it adds a lot of not only different color, but a lot of texture to the garden that sometimes a lot of people, because they use hardwood mulch, you don't see too many pine needle mulch gardens. The other thing you can use is totally and completely decomposed compost. This is an example. I have a friend that lives in northern Wisconsin, where I came from, because you probably guessed I'm not from here. Even though I say y'all really well, I'm not really from here. She has 3 horses, and what she does is she takes and scoops out all the sawdust and the manure and piles it up, and I was up there this summer helping her plant her flower garden, and we had the best mulch where it was from the bottom of the pile, she would scoop up, and we layered that on her garden, and oh my gosh, the flowers and plants, especially the bushes, just totally took off looking good. So there's a lot of good things that you can add to your garden simply by adding mulch. And how often do you mulch? You have to do it at least once a year. The thing about doing this is if you're using an organic mulch, it's going to break down, and you're going to have to replace it and in order to keep feeding that garden. So mulch at least once a year. The best time to mulch is if you can't get to it in the fall, do it in the spring. The spring mulch is the one that's going to help your garden retain its moisture all summer long. So you need to do that. Now, those are pretty much most of our organic mulches. For a second, we're going to talk about inorganic ones. And the inorganic ones are a lot of high-tech, new tech things is using rubber tires, shredded. And the one thing it will not do that mulch does is it won't break down. Well, unfortunately, it also provides a great haven for snakes. And so I would kind of stay away from that sort of thing. The other inorganic mulch that a lot of us use, and I have certain areas in my garden that I use this too, is rock, stone, pebbles, that sort of thing. And it looks beautiful. However, like this summer, it was really, really hot. And what happens is that those rocks heat up and really heat up the ground, but also the plants underneath it, and it becomes a problem for your plants. And I know that some of mine did suffer a little bit from that. The other thing is that there's different plastics that you can lay down. Black plastic is the best as far as weed control. It will not let any moisture into your garden. And so you want to use that sparingly and in the correct areas. Say that you have a large area that you don't have anything planted yet, but you don't want to have to go out there and weed that either. So you use plastic, black plastic. Don't use clear plastic. Clear plastic lets the weeds grow, lets the sun shine through, lets the weeds grow. Not very good. The other thing that you can use is landscape fabric. And the nice thing about landscape fabric, and I do have some of that also, but it does let the moisture in, and anything that's on top of it as far as the leaves of your flowers, falling down, they can break down, and that can also help your plants. Any of these mulches, what they help do, besides all the stuff that I've already talked about, is that it keeps disease for plants down. Mm-hmm. And I think you were saying that you had some problem with roses. What happens in either crusted soil or soil where once the rain comes down and splashes up on the bottom of the leaves, that's where you're going to get some disease processes. Mm-hmm. And I know there was one rose bush, because I had the same trouble. I finally had to dig it out, and because I tried everything under the sun in order to get rid of that, not realizing that the problem was what I had around it. Mm-hmm. I never even thought about it. So, you've got to be really careful about what you're using. And I just want to go back for a second to our organic mulches. A lot of and I haven't really seen it around here, so, but cocoa bean shells, a lot of people have used those, and they look beautiful because they have that lovely rich brown color, and they smell heavenly, especially if you're like a chocolate addict, you know. However, what happens is they have the same ingredient, theobromine, that chocolate has, and if you have pets, especially your puppy, he may think that that's a really good snack, and he's going to get quite ill. So there again, all these things have their proper use, and you can use any of them, inorganic or organic, as long as you're using them properly. So anything that helps a gardener work efficiently is something that we need to think about as gardeners here in our area. There's one other topic that we need to talk about as far as mulch is concerned, and this is cover crops. And we have a wonderful video made by the Benton County Master Gardener, Beth Strickland. And she goes over the importance of cover crops and the use and reasons. So if you want to kind of sit back, grab your cup of coffee and watch this short video, enjoy.
To take root. Today we're in Fayetteville, Arkansas at the home and garden of Mr. Calvin Bay. I was fortunate enough to take Calvin's biological gardening course this past year, and I was particularly interested to hear his information on cover crops. So Calvin, why cover crops?
Very good question. Why cover crops? Cover crops are designed for improving the soil. And what that means is that you're going to add organic matter with cover crops, and you're in turn going to increase the tilth, in other words, the workability of the soil. Not only that, but the water infiltration will increase, the water holding capacity will increase, and as a result, you'll have a more productive garden. One of the real critical things is when do you plant these cover crops? Ideally, you will plant the first 2 weeks of September. If you knew for sure that the October was going to be warm, you might be successful planting the last 2 weeks of September. But there are many choices as far as cover crops are concerned. I've really narrowed it down to 3 that I recommend for this area, and they are oats. And be sure to distinguish oats from wheat because they're quite different in terms of growth characteristics. And the second one is Austrian winter peas. And the third one is tillage radish. Now they each have individual characteristics that for different uses. Second thing to think about, and this is also very critical, and that is the seeding rate. And you'll be surprised how little seed you need to use. So, for oats, 1/2 a cup of seed is all you need. Now, what happens if you put more than that? You get crowding of the plants, and the plants tend to be spindly. So, stick to the 1/2 cup. For Austrian winter peas, you can get by on 1/3 of a cup for 100 square feet. And for the tillage radish, 1 tablespoon. That's plenty. 1 plant for every square foot. It would be adequate. Okay, I've got an area laid out here. It's a small area. It's about 33 square feet, which means, remember, 1 tablespoon per 100. So this is all I would need right here, right there, if I had 100 square feet. But I've only got a third of that, so I'm going to use a teaspoonful. Now, the trick is, how am I going to get this evenly distributed over this area? Well, I'm going to take some of this soil, I'm going to put it in this pail, maybe half a gallon or so, and dump the seed right into the pail. Now, the next thing to do is just to mix that thoroughly. And that's not difficult at all. Find some nice loose soil or use some compost. Screen compost would work the best. Okay, after we've got the seed mixed, the next thing is to take this mixed seed and soil and sprinkle it over the entire area. And the reason for the soil is just to help to get a better distribution of the seed. And it is not going to come out perfect, but it'll be very close to equal distribution when you're using this much soil. So I finished this job. I've got all that put on. I want to cover that seed ever so slightly, and so I take my rake just like so. And I do that for the whole thing. Once that's done, I grab my fork and start putting a little bit of straw back on. And I'm not going to put a big thick layer of straw here, but I'm going to put enough of straw so that you basically cannot see any of the ground. Cover crops aren't restricted just to vegetable garden beds. Here I have a flower bed. I've recently planted about a month and a half ago tillage radish and oats right in the flower bed. It'll help to improve the soil here just as it does in the vegetable garden.
So as you can see, there are a lot of options for growing cover crops. We hope you'll give it a try. For Calvin Bay and the Benton County Master Gardeners, this is Beth Strickland and Take Root.
Take Root was really interesting.
They had a lot of good ideas, things that I had never thought of.
I'm going to
before.
use that for my flower bed. I don't have a vegetable garden, but
Neither do I,
for
but
the flower bed, that will work perfectly.
I like the part where it adds nutrients.
Yes,
So
definitely.
That's good. That's
So,
very good.
With the mulch and Take Root, we've learned a lot about our gardens today. Now let's move on to what we need to do in our garden in October. Would you like to share the first part of what we need to do?
Well, I'm talking about tropicals and house plants, and after we're getting to the time of around the first frost. Of course, here in Bella Vista, it could be November or December, but be looking for it in October. And you want to bring in your tropical or house plants that you've had growing beautifully on your deck or your screen porch. When the temperature gets to be around 48 or so degrees, any cooler than that, and you're going to start seeing some temperature damage on the leaves. But the one thing that I didn't know, a friend recently gave me a Christmas cactus, and it's been growing outside. It needs that first hard frost in order to bud and bloom by Christmas time. But move all of your inside plants back inside. We're in for the winter.
Now we'll talk about annuals and herbs. And now they're starting to fade because we're moving into the cooler season. And we're enjoying the blooms, but they won't last long. And so from the basil, let's talk about making an herb vinegar or adding oil to it or dried herbs for winter cooking. You can also place some of these dried leaves in a freezer tray and use the frozen herbs for your soups or casseroles this winter. And let's start talking about planting our pansies and kale for October. They'll look beautiful all through the winter season, and you'll have something to come into spring with because they will last that long. The icicle pansies are just the best. Then we also have our mums, and this year there were asters, and the asters were absolutely beautiful. I have not been able to find asters in this area, but this year I did. And finish planting any perennials that you need to mulch.
The other thing that I wanted to say is this time of the year is when we start planting bulbs. I have planted bulbs by the hundreds in my yard, but you have to be careful so that you don't feed the animals with those. This would be the time to start planting your bulbs, and this is why we're selling the Bella Vista daffodil at the Bella Vista Garden Club Fall Plant Sale.
Roses are also in the season, and we need to stop deadating them and let the rose hips grow. They make lovely decorations for your winter flower bed, and the new growth will be encouraged if you don't do this, and then the canes will freeze. So you want to stop doing that. If the roses are too tall and they're going to blow in the wind, you'll need to cut them back about 3 feet, and that depends on the size of your rose bushes. I like to cut mine just a little bit lower than that, and then kind of mulch, but not too close to the stems or stalks of the roses. And as for shrubs and trees, it's a good time to get those in the ground, but please don't forget about watering them. They need to be watered all winter long because of the season that we're in if we have low moisture.
I personally don't have any green lawn. I have rock in my yard. But the only thing I'm going to say about lawns is you want to keep them more than 2 inches. And if you don't like the brown look of the fescue, you can try overseeding.
Let's talk about the Bella Vista Garden Club in conclusion here. And Barb, when are we meeting?
Well, our first meeting of the year is this Wednesday. Our next meeting then will be the 26th of October, and we're going to be talking about, well, I guess I'm going to be, along with Linda Niemeyer, doing a program on saving your flowers from your garden and drying them and making arrangements for the home. And that's at the United Lutheran Church, forgot that for a second, United Lutheran Church on Cooper Road, and we start at 11:30 in the morning, and everybody is welcome.
And you'll be able to see our website on the bottom of the screen. And again, everyone is welcome. The light lunch will be served, and lots of good gardening information for you. And thank you, Barb, for joining me today with all that important information. And we're going to go out and mulch like crazy, aren't we? And hope you come to visit us again at this program. And I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll tune in next month. Until then,
Happy gardening.